No,
I guess I'll say it.
he had a medical emergency.
Valuing and financing entertainment content. I know.
Don't ask me any tough questions. I got major shit going on.
Hello.
You're not Seth Willinson, but I think it's Seth Willinson.
Okay, I'm not Seth Willinson.
You might want to switch these.
Oh,
Is this what you sent us?
thank you so much.
For introductions. Second pass. That'll be the first question. Our favorite topic.
Okay.
Close to us or close together on this thing. Yeah. This is crazy, this conference. It's like the whole hotel, like every ballroom has things like this all day, out by the pool. It's like there's got to be 100 of these things.
I tried to read it online and I couldn't.
Yeah, I know. And it's like several days. Too. I think it's the first day, and it might go all week. It's crazy.
Hello.
And you do this, and then get back to the office.
It's so comforting to know that there's chaos when I'm not doing this.
I know.
Yes. Yes.
You can be Molly's panel tomorrow.
No, I didn't think so. Not that I know. No one's told me about it. I'm in Dallas tomorrow. Okay.
Scott, are you returning
Yes.
for financial?
Yes.
So yes, you're surrounded by attorneys. Yeah.
Yeah. You're safe.
Depends if you're or ending.
Yeah.
How deep do you go in the overview of the firm that you're with?
I mean, the email he sent out said 60 seconds at most. So it's very sort of surface level. I'll just say my name, my firm name, and sort of what we do related to the entertainment industry. But yeah, it's not even an elevator pitch. It's like a log line. The great thing is at the end of it, depending what you say, you're gonna get people coming up like they were last time asking you, basically if you can finance them. I had people asking me if I could represent them before. Yeah, I was like, oh, yeah. Something I'm gonna do.
Really, people come up and solicit you like that?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've done them years ago, but even my LinkedIn isn't current with me.
Just waiting for you.
No, I mean it's to a point where
Is this me? It was.
I think so.
Diane, Lisa, yeah, all right, we got it.
We've got one seat down here in the front. We got one here down in the front. If we could get that chair moved into the. Okay, this is going. Okay, we are on. Good late morning. This is. I actually counted it up. This is my 20th panel on this topic now for Digital Hollywood, and we never seem to exhaust it, so that's a good sign. The world keeps changing, some of us maybe not so much. A little closer into the mic, okay. For all panelists, I think we're going to have to speak right into the mic to be heard. I also understand this is being webcast, so this is for posterity, folks, or however long things will last in the cloud. The name of the panel is Valuing and Financing Entertainment Content, Movies, Television, and Online Video, from Venture Cap and Equity to Crowdfunding. In other words, we're going to talk about everything in the world of entertainment and try to do this in an hour and in an hour. So without just a couple of housekeeping details. One, unfortunately, Daniel Wagner, who is with Fortitude Films. We got a last minute word that there's a medical emergency. We hope it's nothing serious and that he'll be okay, but he will obviously is not here. I know a lot of you in the audience and some of you have been too polite to ask, why I'm wearing a large piece of plastic around my neck. It's the latest fashion style, just so you know. You're just behind the times. No, seriously, I had a little medical emergency of my own in January with a bulging disc pressing on my spinal cord, and I was basically paralyzed from the waist down. So the wonderful thing is we live in a world where such things can be hopefully cured. They did what they call the dead man walking surgery.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, what they actually do is they take out your disc and replace it with a cadaver bone. And the reason for the collar is that I have to keep my neck fairly straight so that my bone cells grow into whoever the dead guy was. Anyway, just to put things into context, I want to get a sense of who's in the audience. So first of all, how many of you are self-employed? Okay. How many have fully funded their 401k? No. Let's break this down by industry. Movie business, television business. Let's call it online video business and publishing. Okay. That gives the how many would call themselves independent as opposed to working for one of the major studios? Okay, that's useful for context. To get things rolling here, I've encouraged each of the panelists to introduce themselves and give us, their standard 30-second elevator pitch on who they are, what they do, and what they hope to accomplish for the rest of their lives. This is my partner, ex-partner, maybe occasional partner. That's a very good way to put it. Seth Shapiro. Go ahead and take it away, Seth.
Hey, I think I know everybody here. Hi, I'm Seth Shapiro. I've been working in digital and television for about 20 years. Buy and sell side for new service development, for people funding companies in the space, and for startups in digital, looking for the other side of the equation. For the last 10 months, honestly, this tends to be a cyclical business. I've done 90% of my time has been in development of new over-the-top services. For MVPDs, for new companies coming into the space, for private equity that have a particular interest in a specific niche. And it's been everybody from catalogs to religious organizations to international players that see Netflix coming into their territories and are trying to figure out a hedge and a competitive place. So it's been a really amazing time. And it feels like, in brief, a lot of the things that we've been talking about for the last 15 years started to happen really, really quickly in reality, in economic terms, in the last 12 to 18 months. So it's been fun.
Sky?
I'm Sky Moore. I am a lawyer at Strick and Levan. I do film financing. I marry movies with money. Recently closed the largest Chinese investment in Hollywood, which was the Hunan Group investment in Lionsgate. And I am the author of a book called The Biz, which if you don't have and you're in the independent world, you should have. It's a very kind of comprehensive overview of the film industry. It's on Amazon and it's cheap. So it's a good fun overview. I wrote it for my mom. So if she gets it, you'll get it. It's called The Biz. Write a regular Forbes blog. So if you're interested, you can find me on Forbes. I have all the normal lunacy of Twitter and YouTube and all the other fun. And I've rumor has it I'm on page 14 of Variety today as a power lawyer or something or other. So for what it's worth. And I gave to those who are interested in following, I have an email and my Forbes blog. You can pick up I kind of summarize all the fun. So if you want it at the end of the session, you can pick up information so you can follow me or join my email or do whatever you'd like to do. So
Good. That worked out well.
that's what I do.
Yeah.
You want one
Before,
too? All
before,
right.
yeah, before they go. Next, Seth Willinson.
I've been working in the business for about 45 years. I was New Line's third employee. Had an executive career at RCA and Paramount, and I have worked for myself for about 25 years. I do a combination of valuation, producers rep, producing, strategic consulting, or as I like to say, anything legitimate that people will pay me based on a very varied experience. I've had some hit movies. I've had some movies that made more money than I should have, and I've had some movies that didn't do as well as I would have liked them to have done.
Just face it, Seth, you and I are here because nobody will employ us anymore. So it's, this is what we do for a living. At least this is what I do. I don't know what Seth does. I love giving him a hard time. Next on the panel is Diane McGrath, and I won't give you a hard time.
Oh, you probably will, and that's okay too. So I'm Diane McGrath, I'm managing director of an investment bank called J. Stricker Capital down on Wall Street. We're a 105-year-old firm, global representation across countries, multiple divisions. I'm running the media and tech portion of the business. So we look for and do finance deals involved in all types of content that leverage technology as it comes into the marketplace. We also help them build and create revenue models for extending the life of the revenue as well as mitigating risk.
And anchoring our panel down at the end is Chad Fitzgerald.
Hi, I'm Chad Fitzgerald. I am a partner at the law firm of Kinsella, Weitzman, Iserkamp, and Aldisert in Santa Monica. We're a boutique, primarily litigation firm with a focus in the entertainment industry. I represent mostly talent, which is everyone from an individual all the way through the smaller production entities, but not the big five studios, basically. I'm usually suing the big five studios. But we handle everything from financing disputes to profit participation, intellectual property issues, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I've done some work for them, and they're a great crew. Seriously, I highly recommend them.
Thank you.
We're going to go to Q&A fairly early because I found that the audience is always a lot smarter collectively than I am in terms of trying to figure out which question to ask next. But I get a chance to ask a couple of my own before we do that. I really like to focus on the impact of the dramatic rise of original production as a result of all the new entrants in the OTT and MCN and SVOD spaces. Not only are all the traditional pay TV heavyweights defending their turf with more spending on original fare, but we now have Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, Hulu, and dozens of others plowing money into production. Is this really the best of times? How long will the bonanza last? And at what point does the consumer say, basta? I mean, we love all the new programming, but we don't necessarily want to pay for it. We didn't before, and we don't really want to do it now. So, Seth, why don't you start start and we'll work our way down the panel on that.
Yeah, I don't remember if you and I have talked about this here before, but I know we talk about it a lot, which is that this sort of notion of having a tentpole series or a few tentpole series or specials or features attached to a subscription offering feels relatively new. It feels like when you look at Orange is the New Black or House of Cards for Netflix or Transparent, which has been a real huge breakout, especially in award season for Amazon Studios, it feels like, is this a new thing? But in truth, that's how it's always worked. HBO or Showtime or FX for that matter has always had there's a disproportionate amount of value in a hit. That's the nature of the business. It's always been a hit-driven business. And so no matter how much catalog content you roll up, it's a much harder row to hoe if you don't have something that distinguishes you. And it's fascinating just how much, in a certain way, it feels like an old wine in new bottles, just because, I mean, there's a great quote from Ted Sarandos, who's the number 2 and chief content officer at Netflix, where a few years ago he said, our goal is to become HBO faster than HBO can become us. And part of that, right? So when you look at it in that context, for those guys who are for Roy at Amazon, I think a lot of it comes right out of that playbook. It's taking what's always worked in Hollywood and doing it again.
Sky, your take.
I think it's unbelievably exciting times. I think there's endless opportunity. I think several comments. One is where I believe that it will ultimately go is going to be free content. I have a Chinese client that did a film recently in China, which is kind of leading the way on the digital area. $12 million from box office, $4 million from DVD, and $70 million from free ad-supported online. So the fact that people may not pay subscription or download, don't worry about it. They'll be watching for free, and you'll be getting ad dollars. So it's dollars or dollars. So who cares? There's an unbelievably exciting way for funding these days. Crowdfunding is just unbelievable and taking off. And more importantly, they just passed what's called Reg A Plus, where you can do basically up to $50 million offerings to the public and take the non-accredited investors. And so all the people that are giving money for free on Kickstarter are now going to move to wanting to get some stock for, instead of giving it for free, get a few shares. And for example, there's a company called indiecrowdfunder.com that does exactly this, and it actually does both. It does donation and it does the equity model. So I think the equity model is going to become profound. One for all the independent people out there. 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, the SEC passed rules permitting public offerings do advertising for your private offering. So if you're trying to raise money for a film, you're now allowed to advertise. In this entire time, I have seen one advertisement in the trades, a single ad. No one's taking advantage of this, and it's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable waste of opportunity as a way to raise financing. There's also in the digital space, there's just unbelievable opportunity. If you do, I have a client that's doing productions using what they call digital influencers, these people on YouTube, and you can monetize their fan base dollar per viewer. So if they've got a $2 million fan base, you guarantee at a minimum you're going to get $2 million for your film. And you can hire these people, put them in a film, they'll push it on their YouTube channel, and bingo, you make a built-in profit. So that's just instant if you want to, and it's all digital, and then you can go out digitally. You can make it digitally. You can sell it digitally with Vimeo or VHX or iTunes or Netflix. So that's exciting. The other thing that's happening on the companies coming in to pay for content is unbelievable. I predicted a year ago in one of my Forbes blog that Netflix would, at some point, I said, start going into the high-end film business and go day and date theatrical releases. And lo and behold, the first film they did it on was mine. I was doing Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon 2. Netflix swooped in, picked it up, paid more guaranteed profit to the Weinstein Company than any other source. So the Weinstein Company, of course, did it with built-in profit, and is now going worldwide day and date theatrical release, which is a profound change, by the way. Is going to totally upset the way pre-sale financing works, because instead of going to Cannes and selling territory by territory, you're now going to go to a digital convention somewhere and sell pre-sale worldwide video on demand rights to Netflix or somebody. So I will tell you, this is profoundly going to change the way that you finance films. So to me, this is just such an exciting world. There's so much. I mean, I just did the Butler with a whole bunch of crazy financing. I just did Snowden with Oliver Stone's film with equity from around the world and pre-sales. So the pre-sale model's still working, but you know, there's and tax credits, of course. You've got the state tax credits. There's so much sources of financing. There's no shortage of financing for those that want to make a film these days. It's overwhelming, all the opportunities.
Okay, folks, you heard it here, Reg A Plus. Not only can it help you raise money, but you can dance to it too.
Yes, it's big. It's big. It's going to be
Okay,
big.
that was a really lame attempt at a joke. So I think we better turn it over to Seth Willinson.
Okay, I think it's a good time, not a great time. And the reason I say it's not a great time is that it's a great time for big movies that would normally have competed for, sources of funding that are, out there doing that. And there's been a migration to some of the major digital customers. It's really not new in a sense, a lot of this. We've seen rushes into video. We've seen rushes into pay TV. We've seen rushes into satellite, into international. They've all created opportunity, but it has to be modulated a little bit based on what kind of product you're trying to produce. You can't, there's no way that you shouldn't chase your dream, but you have to do it with, a foot on the ground. 25 years ago, HBO refused to accept the idea of a cable television academy. Said they wanted to, compete in for the Emmys with the regular television academy, even though at that time less than 50% of the audience was seeing HBO. HBO knew at that time, which is really not that different from Netflix, that people will retain their subscription based on remembering that they watched 2 or 3 events. What happened at HBO was that the price of new movies continued to drop substantially after they moved into that business. And exactly that is happening at Netflix at this time. So you can learn a lot from Crouching Tiger. You can learn a lot from Adam Sandler. You have to take it and put it into the context of what you're trying to do with the films that you're involved with. It's variable. And I think there's great opportunity, but you really have to be very sober, and you have to be concerned with how much of an economic return can you get from the aggregation of the new customers. At this point, for a film that would easily get $1 million to $2 million in video 7 years ago, they would be lucky to be getting $200,000 out of the digital space.
Okay, that's a natural segue into Diane, since you're you're obsessing about the numbers and in terms of whether or not your bank should be writing checks. So give us a sense, especially about what you're seeing in the emerging technologies as far as opportunity.
What we typically do is we don't invest in one-offs. So what we invest in, and by one-offs, I don't mean just shows or films or anything. We're typically investing in companies that have those, and forgive me for reducing everything like this to a word called product, but that's what we do. So it becomes product, and then how long can you monetize the product? So in your typical distribution windows, of course, we look at all of that, but then we also look in something that's everybody is very familiar with, is the merchandising and licensing component, so that revenue continues. Or how do you monetize it before a film is produced and out for distribution, which is typically to most of our investors who are 20 months, 24 months. What's happening before that? What does risk mitigation strategy look like for that? So those are the typical things that we look at, that we need to see. To your point, Sky, of the 506C ruling, the crowdfunding thing, some of the problems with that is what that supports, and that's a great pathway for discovering and closing revenue and funding. But then what happens if you're a part of a company, you're going to need a liquidity event for all those investors. We don't have our own horror shows and subsequent rounds of things, but everybody wants a liquidity event. What's the exit? And that's where the banks are different because they want the bigger exits. Like what you're saying is absolutely wonderful, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. It's a wonderful way to raise money. It depends upon what you're looking to fund and what you want to do with it and how far you want to go. If it's a single property, that's a great route. If it's funding a company of which a property is of one of many, and you're going to pursue multiple revenue sources of the ones I just mentioned, then that's a different route. The OTT stuff is, you know, whatever that means to you and whatever it means to us, I think it's great. It's a great opportunity. It's becoming increasingly more difficult to find or be found if you're a content creator. The things that we see now, the people that come into our banks, you know, brands are now into the content business. Everybody's into the content business. We see content companies building platforms. We see platform companies building content, and it's kind of like the war of content versus technology, which is good for us because we have to figure it out. But simultaneously it's just not about being found for that window of distribution, but how do you keep the revenue going? What's the life of the customer that you're acquiring? What's your mobile plan? Do you have a mobile plan? Because then you own something that's very unique that we found that we actually look for is what's your strategy for creating a database for all your fans? We turn fans to users. So you can actually create an ARPU number, average revenue per user, which has a monetization number, which you can use and mitigates your risk and gets you more like you own the IP. So there's a number of ways and strategies you can go about that so that you can retain more of your production, your company or whatever. And that's, so I think it's like everyone said here, it's interesting time, but in that interesting time, anything that looks like money of our quality, you need to have a bigger strategy that goes out for a number of years.
Okay, and Chad, give us your take on the opportunity, since you talk a lot about talent in some of the smaller companies.
Yeah,
Where's the sweet spot in the emerging technology space for your clients?
well, it's interesting. I mean, to echo what everyone said, it's a very exciting time because there's so much content and so many new vehicles for distributing it. And where I look at it is representing talent is where talent can maximize their own revenue in that process. And it's hard in a way because as we move away from the traditional television model or the traditional film financing distribution model, it's really sort of the Wild West in deal structuring now about how talent is going to get paid, not so much on the front end, but on the back end. And there's a ton of litigation about that, obviously. We do a lot of litigation about that. And in the traditional TV model, it's sort of, everyone understands that there are the show is created by a studio and licensed to a broadcast network. The broadcast network pays a license fee that is the primary source of revenue for the studio, and then the talent shares in that. But if, as the broadcast networks sort of diffuse into the ether, like everything else, you know, where capturing that money, capturing your piece of that money becomes very challenging. That's what we're seeing now.
Okay. I want to do at least one more pass down the panel here because I have I want to focus a little bit on risk and reward. The question is, where is the smart money going and why? To follow on with what Chad was just saying, traditional media continues to erode, and we're seeing it. There's a shift of viewers from broadcast to cable and from print to online. But you know, where in the process is the smart money going for the highest risk, highest reward for the risk? Does that make? Anybody want to tackle that?
I'll take one point. It's a macro trend that I think you can kind of take away from here. And once you think about it in these terms, I think a lot of deals make a lot more sense. And the way I would put it is whoever owns the customer wins. If you think about the power of MVPDs and cable systems over the years, it was really, there were two major metrics. There was average revenue per user, and then there was churn, which was how many of them left, and then subscriber acquisition costs as well. One of the big sea changes now here is, whether it's for talent or owners, is there's the real ability, and I think this is one of the massive sea changes, is that now there's an ability for you as a content creator or for new subscription service or whatever, to create a direct billing relationship with that customer. So that when you think about the context of the old battles between, Fox and Dish or whoever, why are Apple and Netflix and Amazon why are their market caps what they are? I think one of the big things that people don't think about enough is they've got the credit card numbers, right? And so to the extent that any of you guys can find a niche, whether it's Appalachian banjo music or, connecting, traditional South Asian dancing with people here who would want that, even if you charge people $1.99, that's a model that was really not possible before, right? You had to go out to a traditional distributor. And I just want to connect that to one more thing that Sky said really quickly, in terms of the YouTube influencers. The reason I think we've seen everybody know what the MCNs are, right? The multi-channel networks that have been getting bought up. I think part of the reason they've been so extraordinarily highly valued is because, to his point, the marketing value of those those kids that are reaching a new generation, whether it's PewDiePie or Epic Rap Battles of History or Bethany Moda, who was just, interviewing the president. The cost of leveraging them as a marketing force is disproportionately low relative to the old ways of marketing your service. And so the reason I would say Disney did Maker for $500 to $950 million wasn't about creating content. It had nothing to do with creating the content. There's actually a great speech, and you can find it. John Lasseter, the head of Pixar and the head of Disney Animation, said essentially, Frozen was number one, and it had fallen back down to number 6. And at some point, Disney and Pixar decided to cede assets back to the maker community, to the MCNs and the kids and the, creating YouTube videos. And all of a sudden there were all these mashups and new property and memes around Frozen. And guess what? It went back up to number 1. So think about the marketing force of that and the ability to reach those kids and create sort of a direct relationship for Disney to figure out who those kids are and get into direct relationships with those through their talent. I think that's an absolute sea change in value. And I think so those are 2 principles, I think, where value gets unlocked. One is new marketing programs that put you in direct relationship with your audience. And number 1, new relationships that put you in a direct billing relationship with the customer.
But I think we're always talking here about top down, and I think it's also a really good exercise to look at the user case. So because frequently, and I worked in software for a long time, frequently the consumer or the fan is driving the innovation that the bigger companies are a little bit late in adopting. So when you look at a company, my favorite, GoPro, who is uploading 6,000 videos a day to YouTube. So in that case, that's pretty crazy because that's showing a behavior. So everybody's creating content, everybody's consuming content. So how do you integrate something like that? If you're a content creator, how are you reaching out to adopt or integrate that type of strategy? There's a number of things that you can do, but I think that always looking at what we can do for the customer instead of listening to what the customer and how they're using content, how they're viewing content. When you look at everything that the mobile numbers are going and driving, to your point about the databases and owning the customer, and you have the opportunity both through web and mobile, through the email address and through the mobile number, to sell through. And everything, it doesn't matter about the numbers. You can have the numbers, look at WhatsApp and how that was acquired, but they didn't have the strategy for monetization. So while that's a great path, you find the numbers and you aggregate the fans and you own that customer, but then you have the permission to sell through those databases. And then how do you monetize it? And I think that's the next opportunity.
I think something for independent filmmakers to take into consideration is to associate yourself with a social marketing company early on, so that social marketing company can design a program and can actually, collecting names is actually not as simple as it sounds. It requires the use of protocols from Facebook and from Google to be able to do that and to collect those names. But I've seen some really interesting successes in projects that I've been involved with, particularly in the Christian market. And 2 things. There was a great article in The Economist on April 11th about the new funding rules under the Jobs Act. So if you go to The Economist on digital, it's probably been the best explanation of the rules, which I have not seen in any of the conventional industry trades. And my paradigm for over the top and for and this is particularly for independent filmmakers, is there's infinite capacity and finite marketing capability. It's something to keep in mind when you're, really, thinking about that.
I'll give my 2 cents on this, on the question.
Please do, Sky.
Um, Yeah, I second the motion completely, is what was just said about makers is absolutely true. It's the marketing issue. If you're looking for smart money, or looking for money, which smart money hopefully will last, you look for someone who has a footprint with the consumer, because that is the key going forward. And what I broadly call them retailers, and they have now become the most profound source of financing for the film industry by far. You can think, in the digital world, you think Netflix, you think HBO, you think Amazon. So, but now think theaters. Open Road. Open Road has a direct link with the consumers. It's a it's a consortium of theater owners. They're now financing content directly. So anybody that has a direct footprint with the consumers. Walmart is financing content directly with one of my clients, where they give money in exchange for getting video rights, because they want the exclusive video window. So that, and what's happening is they're disintermediating the studios both on production and distribution, which is a profound paradigm shift. When a company with a footprint with the consumer can produce content and distribute, it's like, why do I need a studio? Sometimes they look to the studios, of course, for quality content, but they can get it. They view it as that they can buy it wholesale. Why should we pay retail from a studio when we can buy it wholesale? So that's a huge change. Another enormous shift of financing is and it never to be overlooked, is money from advertisers. You refer to it as brands. And all you had to look at is to the extent Transformers didn't already, blow the window open, Lego did it, right? So now there's Lego 2, and that's just one big advertisement, and it worked. And you don't just think that the content has to be about the product. Think Red Bull, which has dominated the extreme sports area with branding. So you can do it. Procter & Gamble can do this in the family area. What Red Bull does it with extreme sports. Advertisers are the source of financing going forward in an enormous way. They're going to absolutely be the majority source of financing. And then next, to the extent that you can, I'll tell you, other smart money coming is China. And I'll tell you, the play in China is if you can do a co-production that works, that you get through the quota requirement in China, and you get the 42% box office instead of the 27. And all you have to do is and it can be in English language, and it can be not even shot in China. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon 2 is not being shot in China, and it is an official Chinese co-production, right? So it can be English language, not shot in China. But you can get Chinese funding, which is just unbelievable these days. I will tell you, China is it's on fire. If you can play to that market, and your opportunities are endless.
You bring up an interesting point. I was sitting here reminiscing just a little bit about American film markets past that I've attended in these areas, and it used to be that filmmakers and to some extent TV producers would be looking for pre-sales to the English-speaking countries. Italy was big at one point. Germany. Japan, and you could almost, between that and in a pay TV pre-sale, you could almost fully finance a movie. What's happened to the rest of the world outside of China in terms of that old pre-sale business?
It's really down. The answer is it's really, you must now, you need an anchor. If you're going to make a film, an independent film of any significant budget, number one, you have to have equity to plug the gap, because the gap has gone down so far, so that number one, you need equity, and number two, you need China. It's just that the old pre-sale model is really dead. To fully finance a film with pre-sales. Pre-sales is fantastic to raise about 50% of your budget, but you got to cover the balance.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
What's the quota in China for non-Chinese co-fi? It's 30 films a year they can import, correct?
If you're not a co-production, it's about 30.
Is there a limitation on co-fi projects?
No, if it's a co-production, there's no limitation. There's no quota requirement, and you get twice the box office that you do. the airport can raise twice the financing. It's just enormous.
And how are you protecting the IP in China?
China is now no longer a piracy problem, and I'll tell you why. That no one does DVDs anymore. The piracy problem was DVDs. It's now all online, and online has their, to the extent that China wants to stop content in China, they know how to do it. They put people on a football field and shoot them, right? So China knows how to stop. When they want to do something, trust me, when they want to stop piracy, the government controls all the big media companies. Hunan Group that invested in Lionsgate is a government-controlled, it's a publicly traded government-controlled entity. China Film Group is a government-controlled entity. When China wants to control, they have now decided that making media is now going to be one of their #1 priorities because they want soft power throughout the world. And they know how to control, to protect, to stop piracy. And it's actually no longer a problem in China, or it's less than it is in the United States.
What about merchandise and licensing, which is the whole reason why Jack Ma started investing in studios in Ko-Fi over here, because he knows the play on e-commerce. So in the case of DVDs, but in the case of teddy bears, clothes and pajamas and all that nonsense.
Different issue. Yeah, different issue.
Yeah, that's an or.
No, that's a
anything.
different, that I
Yeah,
get, that I
so
get.
So yeah,
Yep.
it's right to say that it's the biggest opportunity, but in terms of protecting IP, not only in physical merchandise, but anything that looks like digital, especially mobile,
Yep.
then that's still an unresolved problem. And thank God we have a lot of lawyers to do that.
Yep.
I want to change the topic just slightly. We're still talking about the emerging technologies, but we want to talk about the biggest users of those, which is the millennials. We have the two great demographics in the country right now are the baby boomers, and as I look around the room, well, I was looking in the mirror, we're the aging baby boomers. Still, it is what it is. And then there's the millennials, which are largely our children, the children of the boomers. So, and those are the two dominant demographic groups still in the marketplace. Fewer and fewer of the boomers, and now the millennials are beginning to have the next generation. But here's the point of the question, and that is they seem to be using the medium in a fundamentally different way than their parents did. I mean, I can still remember black and white TV sets with 4 channels, and my God, we had to get up and twist a knob.
You probably remember silent films too.
Yeah. You can't possibly be that old, Sky, but anyway, yes. And TV set was I mean, they were black and white. Color was something that didn't happen until the 60s. Anyway, the question is, the millennials have had a huge impact on the emergence of new technologies. But as they age, as they start forming families and having kids, are they going to start looking more like their parents, and we're going to see a return to some of the old models? They're less OTT and more, okay, I got to stick the kid in front of the TV set to keep him quiet for a while. Might as well have all of the Disney and Nickelodeon channels rather than just 1 or 2 things. Are they going to start looking more like their parents, or are the changes we're seeing in this marketplace?
I'm in both demographics. I'm a older baby boomer, and I have 2 young boys, 21 and 24, and they're real. None is interested in the entertainment business, and there is a real hurdle to monetization on the part of the millennials, because they're not used to paying for stuff, and they're going to movies less than they did before in theaters, and they're seeing technologies evolve to the provision of huge amounts of music. So my choice is, do I go to Pandora, or do I pirate off of YouTube or one of the pirate sites? And I think it's a real hurdle for growth and for financing. But to what was said before, it's a great opportunity for new sources of advertising revenue. However, having worked for RCA when they owned NBC and looking at rating shares and being involved in a bunch of new businesses that we went into, and in a McKinsey study of where the business was going to go to. Those remember, the product of television is not content, it's audience. And getting an efficient aggregated number that reaches a identifiable and provable targeted market is a lot harder than it sounds when you're looking at general opportunities. I've even been involved with some discussions with P&G as to how they want to actually try and approach this for a variety of reasons.
I'll tell you, my answer is it's going to go full circle, because when you were watching your black and white, were you paying for it?
No.
Right? Or you're
No.
silent? The answer is no, right? It was free TV. And by the way, that's where it's going. It's going to go back to,
deserve it.
it's ultimately going to go back to free. And because no one's paying it, there's too much content. If you want to know where the future of the film industry is, watch the music industry. That's the answer. And these days, music is basically free. You can get all the free music, great quality, YouTube. You can do playlists. You can do whatever you want, and everyone's just now become enamored with that and not paying. And so you got to go to ad supported, and that's personally where I think it's going to go on the film side.
So are you short Netflix?
No, I'm long Netflix. I totally believe in. I think Netflix is going to rule the world, because they're going to go. What they're going to do is wipe out all my other foreign clients who buy on a pre-sale model, because Netflix is going to go worldwide, day and date, and you're going to have the ability to log on from Japan or Thailand and toggle your language day and date, and download and stream immediately and watch whatever the latest film is in your language. That's where Netflix is going, and it's doing it. And so that's, I believe in them big time.
Yeah, there were two really interesting things. That one I actually lived through myself, which is I was actually working with a big client in the Netherlands when when Netflix launched there. And without going into the whole story, essentially the networks there and the rights holders had to decide whether they were going to license everything or they were going to create their own. And so what they thought about doing, and I think they probably will do, was to create their own Hulu, which is if you want to watch the American content here in the Netherlands or wherever, you can do that. If you want to watch the locally produced content, you have to come to a different play, which we're going to control locally. Otherwise, the steamroller, to your point, just rolls over everybody. And I don't know if this came up on the earnings call, but isn't there some sort of, I think there's a belief that as many as 7 million VPN customers in China are watching Netflix illegally. So there are millions and millions of Netflix customers around the world who just aren't paying for it yet. We're getting it by other means.
Anybody else want to weigh in on this?
Which Netflix is fine with, by the way, because it's getting their brand out.
Yeah.
We'll go to the audience then. Anybody have, go ahead and stand up, sir, and introduce yourself and your question.
Well, yeah, and as a matter of fact, there were a bunch of network launches so there were several different cable networks that at one point or another, without ever saying so publicly, launched on Amazon's AWS, on Amazon's infrastructure, and more. That's a good point. They also, to his point, right? Think about the relationship between Amazon and brands and the ability to upsell you on other stuff when you get stuff for free. Think about the power of that. I get your point.
Anybody else want to comment on that? Okay. Any other questions from the audience? Go ahead, stand up and.
Hi. And my question is, what about those of us out there that develop large amounts of content? We're not one-offs, we develop like thousands of pieces of content.
In what category?
Just my background is marketing and branding, and so everything I've developed is through the brand.
Okay, so this is branded content.
Original branded content.
And your question
My
is,
question is that as a marketer, I look at data, I look at stats, I look at big data. That's how I connect with consumers. Or I look at emotional connection. But with this free downloading enterprise that we're walking into, how do you start collecting data from
who owns it? Are you doing on behalf of the brand or the content? I mean, I'm unclear.
I have partners that are in the brand side, but I create the brand for them, and then I develop like 300 pieces around that brand.
So you're doing it on behalf of the brand, correct? But they
But I
own,
create, so I go to a big partner and I say, let me create the brand,
okay,
and then I create the infrastructure around that brand.
okay. And so your question is, you want to know, or the brand,
Collect the data.
You partner with the company, with the footprint, with the consumer, and they're not going to just give it to you, by the way. They're holding this like the state secret, but they've got it. You know, they all have it like big time. That's why they know what to do.
Right, well, yeah,
When it comes to money, how do I collect the data? In other words, I know how many people buy Pepsi, for example. But if I create a brand that partners with Pepsi, how do I collect the data from that to get the investment?
yeah, you're asking for how do I collect the analytics on what you're saying?
Good luck is the short
No,
answer.
You
Good
need,
luck.
actually, there is a way that you can do it, but it's small, and Skylar is oriented towards big. So that, in the small, way, you can work with a social marketing company that can collect the names based on the protocols that exist at Facebook and on Google.
You can build your own platform.
This is really
Yeah,
a
you
separate
can-
discussion. You should hold
Okay,
that. This
well,
is not.
All right. if you-
different.
okay, go ahead. So, we'll go here in the middle and then all the way in the back. Go ahead.
People like my brother, 10 years younger than me, my brother-in-law, the same age as me out of college, they don't care about the quality so much. So this generation is growing. So my question is, you get into like the window that you have now, or take pure sales, more 20 years ago, I think the prices are going up. You have long white space, then you have issues when it goes out on Apple TV or not being rented, or really you have to buy it for the presentation. So then you rent something to see if you like it, say you're a family, and then you decide you want to buy it. You can't go and, pay $5 less. My contention is that's a great growth. Would you agree, and would you suggest like this kind of expectation of free that this generation is going to be more?
Day and date. They've got to go number one, they've got to go day and date. You've got to close the piracy window. We've got to close the piracy window. And you're going to have, and the theaters are going to, and they're doing it, they're going to have to compete to the high end. Nice seating, 4D seats that move, 3D sound, which is coming. So you're going to, that's you're going to bifurcate the theaters into the high end ones that really compete. But that's the answer, day and date.
Also, you have to take advantage of the marketing investment and the buzz and leverage that across as many platforms as you can. You read a lot about some of the coincidental success of day and date, but nobody talks about how much marketing dollars were spent in a small theatrical release to be able to leverage that. No one talks about the marketing P&A spend on arbitrage, for example, that drove, the video on demand success. But it's actually get it out fast, because you're dealing not only with the risk of piracy, but you're exploiting and leveraging buzz.
I'm also surprised not more people have taken advantage of partnering with the manufacturers of the 4K TV sets that have come out, or the Ultra HD. The picture is extraordinary, but very little content available. And it would seem to me that they would want to seed the market, and that format in and of itself creates certain barriers to piracy, because it's very difficult to start moving those large files around. So let's go to the person in the back. Go ahead. Fair enough.
Look, you can't fight that. It's where you can't fight this, right? It's where it's going. So what you're going to have, the answer is going to be the answer is going to be pricing, the value of, you're going to have to make sure that you make it for less than you earn. And so therefore maybe the value of content will go down, or the cost of content will go down, or you'll bifurcate into two different. You'll have the higher end experience that where they can charge for it, but the other stuff that's free is going to obviously be made for less. But look, this is the answer is what's the same as that's happening in the music industry. It's you just can't fight what's happening.
I want to add one thing, which is to make it very clear to the self-employed independent filmmakers. The price that Netflix is paying for secondary titles is going down, just like what happened on HBO. So it's not the gold rush. It creates wonderful opportunities to have someone replace Avi Lerner in regard to being able to, package the, international side of a movie. A lot of aspects of the business are getting demystified. Anytime there's new money that's coming in, I read the review of every movie that opens in New York each week. And then I try to track why somebody would invest in it, why they would open it in New York, and project what the history of that movie is going to be. It's kind of tedious in a way, but it really has given me a lot of information about the practicality of funding and investing your time in these kinds of movies.
So Scott, I think you're right, and to your point that advertising is becoming more critical. And interestingly enough, if you look at newspapers, probably the more broken industry that we yet to discuss or talk about. And so their migration from what they did live on was the advertising model. So what are they doing about that? And we saw a company come in that was integrating games into advertising. And then they allowed the brands to create loyalty rewards programs in that interacting through those games. And of course, the metric there is views. So the user was engaging more, something that only had one metric before. Now his hang time is greater, his interaction is greater, the views are longer, and there's a loyalty reward component to it. So advertising itself is becoming much more innovative when it comes to content, whether it's print, whether it's movie, TV, whatever. That's also happened when you see sync apps with Modern Family. So the more interaction you have, how you move that user, the customer, through the monetization channels. And that's starting with advertising. So you're right.
Do you see a trend upward in the CPM?
Oh,
rate?
yes.
That's something
yes.
that's also very,
Yeah.
as the audiences are going down, what the consumer becomes worth is a lot more when you're thinking about your economic model, which goes back to the comment that someone made. An intense appeal to a narrow demographic or interest is much more valuable than a soft appeal to a wide demographic.
As
Yeah.
much as 5X, 10X.
On a mono, again, I unfortunately have to think less about blue sky and more about monetization. It's how I've made my living, and so I tend to get drawn into that kind of area, whether it's a tech investment that I look at for some of the investors that I work at, but I'm really positioning myself for the independent filmmakers in the audience here so that they don't, it's great to go out and go on the crusade, but be aware of what you're trying to do and what the returns are.
One of the things I think the lasting value of the broadcast networks has been the fact that despite the fact that they've seen their ratings for like the Cosby Show go from a 40 to a hit now as a 5, they still aggregate the largest audiences at any one point in time, and advertisers are willing to pay a premium. I saw a hand go up over here, and if we have time, we'll go there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think with product or brand integration, we used to go to the sales and advertising people, especially in TV. But now, for these financing from a big company like Procter & Gamble, you have to go to a very high executive level.
Yes. Yes, you have to bypass the normal agency. The agency doesn't know what to do with it. You have to go to the fine. Yes. Or well, now they're now correct. Or go to a company that has created an entertainment content division, which many of them have. That's the answer.
Go ahead.
So there's been a lot of talk about advertising, and there's basically so much said that, rightfully so, that startups that are that have a business model or revenue model based on advertising are getting a lot of skepticism So hence the comments about platforms also moving out, the Sky comments about Netflix. I'm particularly curious about China, going back to the platform point. You know, if you see, talk about Xiaomi finally, you know, emerging from China and sort of, island hopping from country to country around the world. You see Tencent and Weibo and the other Chinese platforms, social platforms, ultimately going the same way and making dents in entertainment.
No, big time. Yeah, I was just there, and I will tell you that it's a tsunami wave is coming. Like it already had. We already did it. I just did the Hunan Group investment in Lionsgate, which was $1.5 billion slate financing, and they're picking up 25%. You've seen Fusan with Rabinoff. You've seen Huahi Brothers just come in with STX. I mean, it's here. It's coming. I'll tell you, WeChat is going to take over. I mean, just big, huge. You watch what's coming. They're going to completely. You're absolutely right. It's coming in a huge way to the consumer. Watch WeChat.
Yeah, because WeChat has many more levels of integration and interactivity.
It's going to swamp Line, for example, just to pick one example.
Okay, go ahead, one last.
Hi, so you said you mentioned sort of YouTube and sort of real sort of audience. So with your content creator that doesn't necessarily have a YouTuber for years, but you want to create content, how do you make yourself more attractive to investors? Like you have an idea, you know exactly what you want to do, but you don't have the audience to support it, so the ad revenue isn't where you get the
Silence. Get equity. Get equity so that you can fund. So you can what'll separate you from the others if you can. And whether it's crowdfunding or anycrowdfunder.com or however you get there, you need equity because that'll separate you from 99% of your others.
There was a movie that one of the panelists on a previous panel released, a horror film that was made on an iPhone for $15,000 and actually was quite successful, more successful than some that were made for 100, which was a low number, and more successful than some that would be many that were being done for $1 million. There aren't going to be many that do that. That's an anomaly. But keep your production costs low, and that's a good start. And think about who is going to watch this and why are they going to do it and how are you going to reach them.
Yeah, I know
That's
who
what you have to do.
I know who your audience is. When I was at DirecTV, this guy came and pitched. I was running TiVo at the time, and he pitched me on this idea that still sticks with me, which is that it turns out that at least at the time, one of the biggest Venn diagrams for automotive just turned out to be Cadillac and horse owners. Like equestrians just disproportionately owned Cadillacs, and Cadillac knew that horse owners and equestrians liked. So there was this. So I mean, if you can figure out who your audience is and at least begin to target those, that's a nice play going down into the niche thing. But you really have to understand who your audience is if you don't even have them yet.
And also comps, looking at similar projects or similar content, similar audiences. Yeah, exactly. And then be able to defend it.
Okay, we have, thank you. Thank all of you who have participated. Just want to thank the panel here. And we'll look for you at same panel, Digital Hollywood Fall.
Yes.
And
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, I sure do.
I
keep bringing
Yeah, I
dose
have-
of reality.
Okay, thank you.
That's good.
I was in the movie. Thanks.
Thanks, Brad.
It's a hedge fund in San Diego, and Irvine actually lives in Newport Beach. So it's really, he's going to go back to business school.
I work with Liz Irish,
So I actually have had pretty reasonable access to some of the
Yeah.
And I have people that travel to France.
Well, a lot of people.
Oh,
that's great.
No, I mean, it's just, yeah, well,
I appreciate the offer.
I do. They're the same age as yours. One's a litigator. And the other one works in China, for a gaming company.
And I had a very close relation with Sherman Sells. They were in business in Europe.
I'm on YouTube.
My friends who I did work for all left.
Steel comes.
Yeah.
In fact, Mike Garrett is actually running.
Yeah, it's smart to do that. Exactly. That's
Oh,
what I was gonna say
nice.
about the whole generation gap.
Anyway,
thing.
I
They
did
changed
like
that to file.